While we still are on our little bit of a break for UFC, today I wanted to talk about some potential matchups that will either never in a million years happen, it's way past the time, or it's just fighters that are maybe in two different states of their careers, different divisions, or it's just whatever the fight circumstances are that probably won't happen today. We are going to be talking about my personal dream MMA fights. I'm going to be talking about why I'd like to see these fights. I'm going to give a very, very quick prediction for the fights just to have a little bit of fun here, and this is what I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully, you enjoy with me. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with many YouTube channels. Let's get started with the first fight. And guys, this is a fight that I believe out of everything that we're going to be talking about today, this is one fight that I would die to see, man. Could you just imagine a prime TJ Dillashaw taking on Petr Yan? This would be one of the most technical fights of all time. Could you imagine the technical matchup? First of all, the first thing that I would say to you guys is never in a million years bet on this fight unless it's a round line because both guys are insanely tough. I think that both these guys are two of the greatest bantamweights to ever do it, two of the greatest fighters to ever do it. Could you just imagine the perfect technique between the two? And like I said, for the sake of the video, I would love to know what you guys think, by the way, down below about the matchups, but I would give a slight edge to Petr Yan. I could just see him kind of pressuring Dillashaw, defending and slipping everything that he's kind of throwing, and I don't think that TJ Dillashaw would be able to knock out Petr Yan. I think that Petr Yan will be able to walk him down a little bit, landing a little bit more damage, landing a little bit more shots, but that's another fight, and this will kind of be the theme of the entire video. I could see every single fight going either way, but out of everything that I'm gonna be talking about today, this is probably one of the most fun fights that I could imagine or could have dreamed of. This right here just might be the fight that if I could match up anything from this list and have like a dream MMA fight, it would probably be this. But let's continue on over to the next matchup over here, guys. Yair Rodriguez versus Edson Barboza. I don't think that anybody would ever want to see this fight, but could you imagine two prime versions of these two going against each other? The reason that I picked both of them is because it's some of the most fast yet technical striking that you would ever see from some fighters in general, and I would love to see. We've seen Edson Barboza go down to Yair Rodriguez's division, or Rodriguez could always go up in the division. Could you imagine both of these guys in their primes going at each other with the speed and the striking that they have? There would be no ground game in this fight whatsoever. I would give a slight lean to Edson Barboza in this one. Very, very slightly. And then, dude, these fights, and one of the reasons that I want to see all these fights is because they're all going to be razor close, right? But I think that Edson Barboza would be able to get a little bit of a one-up on him. Maybe have a little bit more of a sting with his shots, but I would die to see this fight, dude. The striking that we could see, both guys not having to worry about takedowns and just like letting go. Flashy striking too. This would be phenomenal, man. Let's continue on over to the next matchup. Now, excuse the low-quality PNG over here. This is the UFC and their goated website. Cain Velasquez versus Jon Jones. Back in the day, guys, I have been talking about it dude, before I had it, this is way before I had a YouTube channel when I first started getting into the UFC, man. I was screaming from the rooftop that Jon Jones would not be able to handle Cain Velasquez. And I still would love to see this matchup. I'm talking way back in the day. Jon Jones is champion, Cain Velasquez either champion or title contender. I think that Cain would push a different pace than Jon Jones was even used to with Daniel Cormier. I think Cain would actually be able to get Jon Jones to the ground, and I think that he would be able to clinch and kind of tee off on him kind of Junior Dos Santos style. I was always very, very confident that Cain Velasquez would get a one-up on Jon Jones, especially with the conversation back in the day of everybody wanting Jon Jones to go up to heavyweight. So I still wish that we could have seen this fight. I would definitely pick Cain Velasquez, and that's actually, I know it's probably a hot take, guys, but that is a very confident pick of mine. Cain Velasquez getting the job done over Jon Jones. Let's continue on over to the next fight. Demetrious Johnson versus Deiveson Figueiredo at flyweight. I would just love to see the greatest flyweight of all time, depending on whether or not you're watching this video. Maybe Alexandre Pantoja loses to Joshua Van. Regardless, Demetrious Johnson is one of the greatest flyweights to ever do it, and he has never, in my opinion, fought anybody besides maybe a prime level Henry Cejudo. He's never taken on anybody that's as dangerous at flyweight as Deiveson Figueiredo is. And I could run up the division with Mighty Mouse on the flyweights of today. I would love to see these matchups, but Deiveson, when he was champion, was just another level of scary. Would Demetrious Johnson be able to get by him? I don't know. He certainly could, and this would definitely be a close fight. I would give a slight lean to Deiveson Figueiredo in this matchup, guys. For all of these fights, I would say 1.5, but we're not talking about betting. I would just pick Deiveson Figueiredo. I would die to see this matchup as well, guys. Let's continue on over to the next fight over here. We have Demetrius Johnson versus Alexandre Pantoja. A little bit more of the same reason. You have two of the greatest flyweights who have ever existed. I would love to see who would be better. And for this one, I would pick Demetrius Johnson. I think that he'd be able to handle the ground game of Alexandre Pantoja. Even if Pantoja has a little bit of success early on, I think as the fight continued on, Demetrius would figure out, and Demetrius would really get the better of Pantoja in the striking and maybe actually wear on the gas tank a little bit. I'm not saying that Pantoja would fade, but Johnson would be fresh for the entirety of the 5 rounds, and I can see Pantoja being taken into a little bit of deep waters with the unique pressure that Demetrius Johnson can bring. So I would pick Money Mouse to beat Pantoja, but again, I would love to see this matchup. Let's continue on, guys, over to the next matchup. This is one a little bit of a unique one over here. Gegard Mousasi, Israel Adesanya. It's kind of the same reason, like I was just talking about with Cain Velasquez and John Jones. This was a matchup that, well, I mean, it wasn't talked about nearly as much as like John Jones moving up to heavyweight and fighting Cain Velasquez. But I have been talking about it, and I've been talking about it on this channel for a long time, that I think that Gegard Mousasi, in his prime, when he was running through the division, like I'm talking middleweights back in the day, when Israel Adesanya was champion too, I think that Gegard Mousasi was the best middleweight, and he never got to show it. Has he had his losses? Yes, but even like when he has his chances, man, he either avenges his losses or he like drags people through wars, man. I think he's extremely well-rounded. I think he is one of the most underappreciated fighters in the entirety of MMA history, and I would be very confident that he would beat Israel Adesanya. I think that he'd be able to deal with the striking, and I think he would be able to either clinch Adesanya, drag him to the ground, but even then, Mousasi's one of those guys that can just, no matter what you're doing, he can handle it. And he could potentially match and beat you at your game. I loved watching this guy fight. Again, so underappreciated, and I would have loved to see this fight because I was screaming with all my friends like, guys, Mousasi's the guy to dethrone any champion that's there. I think he's a phenomenal fighter, man. So that's why I would like to see this matchup. Let's continue on to the next matchup that I've always wanted to see. Alex Pereira, Anthony Rumble Johnson. Could you imagine the firefight that this would be in the first couple minutes? It's a fight. Hey guys, if they fought 10 times, Pereira would win 5 times, or Rumble would win 5 times. It's basically whoever lands their first giant shot first. Rumble, dude, he was so speedy too, with the nukes that he had in his hand. I miss watching Rumble Johnson fight so much. That's as much of a toss-up fight as you could possibly get. I would pick Anthony Rumble Johnson to win. I think he'd be quicker than Pereira, and the way Pereira holds his chin up in the air, it'd be a little bit easier for Rumble to find than Pereira to find Rumble's chin. This is a toss-up fight that would be chaos for like 1 minute. I'd love to see it, man. Absolutely would love to see this fight. I miss Rumble Johnson so much, dude. Let's continue on to a little bit more of a fun fight. Sean Strickland, Nick Diaz. We've seen Nick towards like, not towards the end of his career, but towards the end of his giant layoff and fall off a cliff. He was dabbling in the middleweight division, and he sized up well for the middleweight division. Could you imagine the fun that these two would have? I think that Nick would pressure Sean Strickland enough to the point where he would actually be able to make Sean Strickland. I'm not saying that Sean doesn't fight, but you get what I mean. Sean, jab teep, jab teep, jab teep. Could you imagine the fun that Nick would have where he'd be like just walking forward, and Nick would, and I'm talking a prime version of Nick here. Nick was a good enough boxer where I think that he could really, really bring it to Sean Strickland, and I'd be very curious as to what happened. I don't know who would win this fight. It's a very, very close fight. Prime Nick Diaz was a lot better than people give him credit for. I would give a 51-49 to Nick Diaz in this fight, but I would love to see just the fun that these two would have. Sean wouldn't be able to run his game, and they would just start trading, and neither of them really had all that much power, so they would just be hitting each other, slipping. It would be a very, very fun boxing matchup with Nick goofing around. This will be a very, very good matchup to watch, guys. Let's continue on over to the next dream fight that I have over here. Something that all of us wanted to see back in the day, Khabib Nurmagomedov taking on Tony Ferguson. The fight that the MMA gods refused to ever let happen. I know the common consensus nowadays is that we've seen what Tony Ferguson ended up being, and Khabib would have just taken him down and mauled him just as Khabib did with everybody else. I'm still not on that train. Would I pick Khabib to win the fight? Yes. If I were to predict how the fight would go, do I think Khabib would do what a lot of people are saying that Khabib would do? Yes. 100%, I'm on your team with that. But I still don't think a prime version of Tony would do anything possible to not accept any bad position. Would Khabib at the end of the day be able to hold him down? I think so. But Tony would be throwing up elbows, he'd be throwing up submissions, he would be scrambling, he'd be rolling every single chance that he gets. No matter what Khabib did, I know Tony Ferguson would do everything possible to not accept any position. And that's what would make such a fun matchup. I know that as Tony aged and as Tony continued performing after that Justin Gaethje fight, he ended up not being the same fighter. And I think that people are taking that Tony Ferguson and putting it into the Khabib matchup, saying, yeah, we saw what would have happened. I don't think so. I think Tony would have given Khabib a really, really tough and a really fun fight, but at the end of the day, I still would pick Khabib Nurmagomedov to get it done. This is a matchup that, again, the MMA gods just refuse to ever let happen, guys. Let's continue on over to the next matchup. Charles Oliveira versus Eddie Alvarez. It's one of those fights where you had all of these absolute animals in the lightweight division. Like at the point where Charles Oliveira was champion, Eddie Alvarez, Conor McGregor, or maybe a little bit before Charles Oliveira was champion, the lightweight division was like as stacked, arguably even more stacked than bantamweight is today. And bantamweight right now is, in my opinion, the greatest division ever in MMA. This either rivals it, or maybe overtakes it. Maybe that make for a fun video. It was like the most stacked division in some period of time. I'm gonna consider making that video. Anyways, this is just a matchup between two of the top contenders in the division that we just never got to see happen. You know how like those guys were constantly making the rounds and fighting each other, and it was just like animal after animal after animal, and these guys were having these amazing matchups. We never got to see these two compete. And I think it'd be really fun to see these two compete. I think that if we're talking about a prime version of Oliveira, I think that he'd have a one-up on Eddie Alvarez. But dude, everybody, well, I mean, not like anybody insanely hardcore of a fan, right? And I don't mean to sit down and be like, oh yeah, look how hardcore I am over here. Yeah, Eddie Alvarez very underappreciated, but he is an underappreciated fighter, man. Eddie Alvarez is a warrior in that cage. A lot of people saw him perform against Conor McGregor and just wrote him off completely. Eddie would bring a fight to Charles Oliveira. I would love to see this matchup. I would give a one-up on Charles Oliveira. I think that he'd survive like anything that Eddie Alvarez really brought. Maybe find a submission, maybe find a knockdown in classic Oliveira style. This would be another really, really, really great matchup to watch, guys. Let's continue on over to the next fight. A little bit more of the same reasoning that I've just talked about. Johnny Hendricks, Rory McDonald. You had this point at 170 where there were so many killers at the top of the division taking on each other. One of the matchups that we never got to see. Prime version of Johnny Hendricks, prime version of Rory McDonald would have been an absolute, excuse me, I have to spell this word, my dog's right next to me, T-R-E-A-T, to watch. I would actually think that Rory McDonald might be able to get one over on Johnny Hendricks. But man, a prime juiced up version of Johnny Hendricks, that guy was an animal too. Championship caliber fighter we've all seen. But I think Rory would be able to deal with the wrestling. I think Rory would have some length. I think that he would be able to find some knees. I think he'd be able to clinch up with Johnny Hendricks. I would actually pick Rory McDonald to win this one. I think he would just maybe have his number a little bit. But man, that would have been a very, very fun fight to watch as well, guys. Let's continue on over to the next matchup. One that I would still love to see. Colby Covington, Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier, they're moving up to 170. Colby Covington moving down to 155. Don't care. Could you imagine the beef that these two would have? Dude, I don't know. Like, I know that Colby's record hasn't exactly aged all that well. He had some wars with Kamaru Usman. Like, Colby's been battle tested, okay? I think that Colby, this wouldn't be like the one-sided fight that people are making it out to be. I think at the end of the day, Dustin would be faster. Dustin would piece him up. Can Colby take Dustin Poirier to the ground? Probably. But I don't know. I think it'd be a fun matchup. Like a prime version of Colby, he put the pressure on. And Dustin Poirier could certainly suffer to that pressure. I would just love to see these guys kind of like want to kill each other. Could you imagine? There would be vicious intent with everything that each of them do in this matchup. And I would love to see it. I'd love to see the build-up for this fight. It would be insanely fun. I don't know who would win this fight. I'd give a slight lean to Dustin Poirier. Again, maybe the lighter man's skill coming up and taking on Colby Covington. But if Colby can get him on the ground and working just like he did with Jorge Masvidal, could you imagine Colby taking on Dustin Poirier, taking him down, and doing like what he did to Jorge Masvidal, just like yapping at him a little bit? Or maybe Dustin, after getting taken down in between rounds, Colby's like doing that smile that he does. Either that or Dustin Poirier piecing up Colby Covington, pulling up the shorts, going, yep, gotcha. And just watching one of them in the cage kind of get demoralized and watching them go to war. You just know that this fight would be a dog fight. I wish that we could see this fight, man. It's the one that got away. Let's continue on over to the next matchup, guys. Anthony Pettis, Cub Swanson. one of those matchups that always could have happened. I know that Cub Swanson was in a different division, but I can certainly see him moving up, or Anthony Pettis, dabbled in 145. I would love the flashiness of this matchup. Kind of like when I was talking about Edson Barboza versus Yair Rodriguez. This would be very fun on the feet. Both guys, very fun, very flashy, very durable, have good cardio. This would be a amazing technical scrap to watch. Both guys with a ton of heart. Oh, two of my favorite fighters of all time going at it. It'd be a shame that someone had to lose, and I can't believe that I'd be cheering against Anthony Pettis. Cub Swanson is one of my favorite fighters to ever do it, guys. Also, I made a video a while ago talking about my favorite fighters in history. If you guys are interested, check that out. That's also on the channel. Ooh, you know what? I don't know. Prime for prime? This is another close fight. I'd give a slight lean to Showtime. Slight lean to Showtime in this matchup. I think he'd have the jiu-jitsu edge over here. Maybe get a club and sub. But it's so difficult to knock down Cub Swanson. Another really, really great matchup over here, guys. Let's continue on over to the next fight, guys. This is actually the UFC's website's picture for Kelvin Gastelum. When I was looking up the PNGs for this, of course, I get them from the UFC webpage. I don't remember Kelvin being that fat, man. But, of course, if we were talking about Kamaru Usman and Kelvin Gastelum fighting, it would have been a version of Kelvin Gastelum that was in a little bit better shape. But I've always wanted to watch this fight because, like I was talking about Israel Adesanya, Gegard Mousasi, I have always thought Kelvin Gastelum at 170, like a well-dieted, make-weight version of Kelvin Gastelum, and we've seen that version of Kelvin Gastelum throughout his career. One that's dedicated to the game. I think that he would beat Kamaru Usman. I think that he wouldn't let Kamaru Usman bully him. I think that he'd have good enough wrestling where he can get Kamaru Usman off of him. And I think that Kelvin would start sniping Usman down the middle. I really, really do believe that. He would take the scrap to Usman, and I've been talking to my guys, if Kelvin Gastelum, and I never said this, of course, on a YouTube channel, I didn't have it back in the day, but when I was talking to my friends, like, guys, if we see that version of 170 version of Kelvin Gastelum that's dedicated and dieting, he would handle Kamaru Usman. I don't think that he would handle in the sense like, oh, I'm going to have a one-sided beatdown over here. I think that he would just straight up beat him. And call me crazy all you want. It's a fight that I've always wanted to see because I believe that I'm right in that matchup. And I always wanted to see Kelvin Gastelum become champion, man. Let's continue on to the next fight. Self-explanatory. Michael Chandler, Drew Dober. Imagine the fireworks in this matchup. And you know what? As part of me wants to say, like, okay, Drew Dober would come in and he would be a little bit more technical than Chandler, and then he would be able to find Chandler's chin more than Chandler would be able to find Drew Dober's chin. Maybe like a little bit of a cleaned up version of the Gaethje versus Chandler fight. But Michael Chandler is also used to taking on higher levels of competition than Drew Dober. So I think it'd be a little bit more interesting than maybe at first glance, and my gut would tell me, like, my gut would first tell me Drew Dober, but upon thinking about it, maybe it wouldn't be that quick. Regardless, I still would pick Drew Dober to beat Michael Chandler, but this would be a very, very fun matchup. Like, I don't really see either of them. I mean, there's always a potential for a first-round finish, but I think this would look a little bit similar to the Gaethje fight with Michael Chandler. These two going at it would be amazing to watch, guys. Let's continue on over to the next matchup. The one that got away, Conor McGregor versus Rafael dos Anjos. When Conor McGregor was champion, actually, it's escaping my memory right now. Which one was champion? Was it dos Anjos or was it Conor McGregor that was champion? Why am I having a blank on that fight? Oh my god, I'm having a major, major memory lapse right now. Regardless, this fight was of course supposed to happen, and I've always thought Rafael dos Anjos would beat Conor McGregor. But as we watched Conor McGregor perform, as we watched him perform against Eddie Alvarez, as we watched him perform against Khabib Nurmagomedov, Conor continued to improve his game. And maybe Conor McGregor would be able to just snipe Rafael dos Anjos. I always thought that dos Anjos was tough enough and well-rounded enough where he could push a pace on Conor McGregor, he could take him down, he could work in the grappling. But Conor showed to have phenomenal defense. Conor showed to be extremely elusive, and I'm talking about like an improved version of himself. The guy just kept getting better. So initially when these two were matched up, I was like, dude, dos Anjos is going to ragdoll this guy. Now I don't know. And I've always been curious as to what would have actually happened in this fight. Because if we're talking about, like I was talking about with some fighters earlier, if we're talking about underappreciated fighters, Rafael dos Anjos is certainly one of them. He's one of the best lightweights to ever do it, man. Nobody ever talks about that. And I don't know how this fight would have gone. So I would have really, really, really loved to see this fight, man. If you made me pick, slightly to McGregor. I kind of changed my mind on that one. I was very, very high on Rafael dos Anjos back in the day, but I think that Conor McGregor went on to show improvements, and I think that'd be able to handle Rafael dos Anjos a little bit. But he was still an amazing fighter. One of those that ended up getting away, guys. Let's continue on over to the next matchup. Little bit more of the same like I was talking about the matchup with Sean Strickland. Nick Diaz, Jorge Masvidal. I would love the storyline for this one. I would love the storyline Jorge Masvidal beating up on Nate Diaz. Nick Diaz coming in to get the revenge for his brother. Masvidal wanting to clean up both Diaz brothers. I think it'd be a fun fight. I think that Jorge Masvidal would like play around in the octagon with Nick Diaz as Nick Diaz likes to do. He's a lot more fun to watch than Nate in my opinion. And I would love the storyline for this. I'd love the build up for this. And these two would end up going at it on the feet. I would definitely pick Jorge Masvidal in this matchup. He would probably chop Nick's leg down pretty easily. And I think that he'd be a little bit more vicious in that octagon. And he wouldn't let himself like fall to the game of Nick Diaz of just taunting around, okay? This would be another really great matchup to watch. I would be really, really love to be here for you. Now, guys, this is a very new matchup, and until we did a recent tier list, I have never thought about these two going at it until like I started putting them a little bit near each other on a tier list when I was doing a tier list video for the era of light heavyweights. Yuri Prochazka, Shogun Rua. Could you imagine the chaos? Prime for prime? And dude, people do not give Shogun enough credit. Like the guy towards the end of his career, he was a shell of his former self. He was like a more technical version of Yuri Prochazka. The guy just came in and he went to war. Yuri Prochazka comes in and he goes to war. Could you imagine the battle that these two would have? Yuri Prochazka versus a prime Shogun Rua? This would go down. I don't even care. This would go down 100% as one of the greatest fights of all time. I don't think that either of them would finish each other, especially right off the bat. Like, these two, the battle's the perfect word for it. They would just go to battle. This is one of the most exciting fights that I would love to have talked about throughout the entire video over here. If I could get anything, it's right up there with Petr Yan and TJ Dillashaw, man. I would love to see this matchup, and I can't believe that I never thought about it up until, like I said, I ended up actually putting them close to each other on a tier list. Let's continue on. One of the fights that got away, a lot of people were talking about this back in the day. Max Holloway moving up to 155, taking on Nate Diaz. Some people talking about the BMF title. It would just be another fun matchup, man. It's a fun matchup. Two guys that were kind of not related to each other, but like fans talk about both of them as a fun fight, and then people were kind of putting like, oh, how cool would it be if Max Holloway ended up taking Nate Diaz on? Those conversations popped up every once in a while. I would have loved to see it. Prime Nate Diaz was a lot better than the version that we've seen Nate Diaz getting destroyed towards the end of his career. I still do think that Max Holloway would light him up, though. Max Holloway would be faster. Max Holloway would be just as durable as Nate Diaz. He would, Nate Diaz wouldn't be able to take advantage of the cardio edge that he typically has. This would be a non-competitive fight, and Max Holloway would easily handle Nate Diaz, but it would still be very fun to watch, guys. Let's continue on over to the next fight. One that got away too. Anderson Silva, Luke Rockhold. Guys, I'm sorry, but I think that a prime version of Luke Rockhold would have handled Anderson Silva. I think that Anderson Silva, while he was a great fighter, he's one of the best middleweights to ever do it, I do believe he's overrated. I'm sorry. I know how that sounds, and I know I'm going to hear about that in the comment section down below. I think Luke Rockhold is more well-rounded. I think that Luke Rockhold will be able to deal with whatever Anderson would bring on the feet. And Luke, before his chin ended up getting finally cracked and his chin was never the same, he went through some battles, man. And I think that he'd be able to handle Anderson Silva. I think that he'd be able to get close to Anderson Silva. I think he would enter in well with the body kick, and I think that he would be able to work Anderson Silva on the ground. I think this would have been a very interesting matchup to watch at the time. I'm not saying like handily like like I was talking about Gegard Mousasi, Israel Adesanya. Very confident that Gegard Mousasi would be the guy to dethrone Israel Adesanya. I'm not that level of confidence with Luke Rockhold, but I still think this would be a very fun and a very interesting matchup to watch. This would be a beautiful fight to watch technically for a 5-round period. One of the fights that got away, I would have loved to see this matchup, man. Luke Rockhold was doing other things back in the day, man. Let's continue on. A little bit more of the same like I was talking about earlier. Demetrius Johnson. I would have loved to see him take on TJ Dillashaw. I would have loved to see a lot of matchups of Mighty Mouse moving up to 135. Could you imagine these two going at it? Again, like I was talking about Petr Yan and TJ Dillashaw. One of the most technical battles that you will ever see in the octagon. It's too bad that Demetrius Johnson was wasn't here with the level of talent that ended up coming about. Like, I could match up Demetrius Johnson with everybody in flyweight, everybody at bantamweight. I would have loved to see it. Again, this is just one of the most technical, high-level fights that I could ever watch, or I could ever dream to hope watch. I would have loved to see this matchup, man. Both these two. I don't know. I think that TJ would beat Mighty Mouse. He'd have a little bit of size, a little bit of power. I think that TJ would be able to wrestle with Demetrius Johnson, and I think that he'd beat Demetrius Johnson on the feet very slightly. Close fight, but I would edge TJ Dillashaw in that matchup. Let's continue on. A little bit more of a fun fight. I've had quite a few fun fights over here, guys. Could you imagine how much fun this would be? These two, Nick Diaz, Kevin Holland, taunting each other. I think it'd be a really, really fun matchup to watch. This would get the crowd going. Nick Diaz gets the crowd going. Kevin Holland would play into it. They would be yapping to each other. They would need to lower that microphone down for this fight. For this fight, though. I could see Nick piecing him up a little bit. I could see Nick actually getting into Kevin Holland's head just a little bit. It'd be a close fight. Then again, it depends if this fight happens at 170 or not. I'd pick Nick. I'd pick Nick to beat Kevin Holland, but a low confidence pick in that fight. Let's continue on, guys. I know that we have already seen this fight, okay? But I would love to see a prime version of Jose Aldo taking on Alexander Volkanovski. Jose Aldo, when he was champion and at his peak. Jose Aldo continued on to be a great fighter, and he was a great version of himself when he took on Alexander Volkanovski, but he still wasn't that killer that he was when Jose Aldo was on top of the world. I would have loved to see this. In my opinion, prime Alexander Volkanovski is the greatest fighter to ever do it. Jose Aldo is right there with him. I think that these two would have one of the most fun technical matchups that you could ever dream to watch in MMA. Oh, this might be it. This might be the fight that I would love to see more than anybody else. It's either Petr Yan TJ Dillashaw. Oh, there are so many good fights over here. I think I'd pick this one. If I could match up anybody from the video that I've talked about today, it would be Jose Aldo versus Alexander Volkanovski, but it'd be close. I would die to see any of these matchups, guys. I'd pick Alexander Volkanovski to win a very, very, very slight decision against Jose Aldo. It'd be great to watch. But could you imagine, do you think Jose Aldo would be able to time Volkanovski coming in with his movement? Do you think Jose Aldo will be able to chop down Alexander Volkanovski's leg? I don't know. I could see Volk being a little bit quicker. This is a very, very, very tough matchup to pick. I'd love to know what you guys think about this fight. Again, I know we've seen it, but I'm talking about a Jose Aldo on top of the world here. This will be great, man. I'd pick I'd give Volkanovski a slight edge in that bout. Let's continue on, guys. A fight that a lot of people have talked about over the years. Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev has gone on to be one of the greatest fighters of all time. Khabib Nurmagomedov is widely received as one of the greatest fighters of all time. Two guys that are very closely together. This matchup would never happen in a million years. But who would win? Islam Makhachev is probably a better striker than Khabib, but Khabib brought a different presence, a different aggression level, a different pressure. And I can't not pick Khabib. It's just the dominance that he showed in that octagon. Nobody was able to match his strength, but Makhachev's kind of showing that with a bunch of people too. I don't know. I think Khabib, if you made me pick, I'd pick Khabib. I think that he would pressure. I think they would crash. And I think Khabib would actually end up getting a one-up on Islam Makhachev. But Islam has turned into a very, very, very complete fighter and one of the greatest fighters of all time. I just wish that we would have been able to see Khabib continue his career because it was a shame that so many matchups ended up getting away, guys. A little bit more of the same energy over here. Khabib Nurmagomedov, Alexander Volkanovski. After watching what Volkanovski did to Makhachev, in the sense you are not controlling me. You are not bullying me. You are going to take me down. I'm going to fight you off every single chance that I get. I am going to get to my feet and I'm going to outstrike you. I would be interested if he could do that same thing to Khabib. Because again, Khabib brought a different level of pressure, a different level of strength. Volkanovski did a phenomenal job fighting off Makhachev and fought him off to the point where we've never seen that happen in Makhachev's career before. Could he do that to Khabib? I don't know. And I would love to see if Alexander Volkanovski would be able to actually go up. If he were to go up in weight and take on Khabib as champion, could you imagine if he's able to do that same thing? Having the last round where Volkanovski's yeah, punch him in the face even though Khabib has his back. Although, Khabib might not get his back. He might just get mount and start pounding away, but Volk would still be fighting off every chance that he gets. This would be one of the greatest matchups that you could ever put together. I'd pick Khabib. I'd pick him, but I would just love to see if there is anybody who could go up in weight, let alone just in the lightweight division period. If there's anybody that could have fought off Khabib's game, it's probably this guy, a prime version of Alexander Volkanovski. I would kill again to see this matchup, man. Ooh, this might be it. This might be the fight that I want to see more than anything. I'd pick Khabib to win this matchup, but I would be cheering Volkanovski the entire way, guys. Let's continue on. A little bit more of a fresh dream fight of mine, but I would have loved to see Conor McGregor taking on Ilia Topuria. Ilia Topuria is working his way to being the greatest fighter of all time. It's weird because his record is still so small compared to so many other guys, but he's taken on high-level fights. We've seen him go 5 rounds. We've seen him have the touch of death. Here's the question. Could he find Conor McGregor's chin? If Ilia Topuria were to go up in weight and instead take on Conor McGregor, what do you think would happen? Conor had an excellent chin, but Ilia Topuria, he's putting guys away. He has the touch of death. He has such a unique boxing presence. It's very, very... I keep wanting to use the word, it's a TRAT to watch. I'm sorry, my dog's right here. Conor's so elusive. Conor has excellent timing. Conor also has great power. So would Ilia Topuria walk down Conor McGregor and eventually catch him? Or would Conor McGregor have a striking clinic on Ilia Topuria? I could see Ilia like slipping some shots perfectly, but Conor McGregor, oh, this would be a very interesting striking matchup to watch. Ilia could also try to work the ground game. Ilia is an excellent grappler. Conor McGregor has excellent takedown defense. I would love to see this matchup. I think this is a fight that could go either way. But I think at this point, how could you not pick Ilia Topuria to win a fight? He's shutting everybody's lights off. Could you imagine watching him shut McGregor's lights off? That'd be crazy. That'd be crazy. I would give a slight lean to Ilia Topuria. But prime for prime, man, I know everybody dogs on Conor McGregor now, but Conor McGregor was one of the greatest fighters to ever do it when he was a prime version of himself. And I would have loved to see these two actually get together. I would have absolutely loved that, guys. Let's continue on over here. Little bit of a unique matchup, okay? And picture this. Jon Jones is champion, Alexander Rakic. Guys, I know now, I know like I've gassed up Alexander Rakic too much in the past. I've always thought that he was one of the best light heavyweights to ever do it. Unfortunately, he has a chin problem. He has the Alistair Overeem problem. He has the Curtis Blades problem where the skill set is miles ahead of some of these guys, but he can't take the damage. Jon Jones, as good as he was, I don't think would be able to shut the lights off of Alexander Rakic, even with the chin that he has. So I would love to see the matchup and see if Alexander Rakic and how he would match up against Jon Jones. He would have the size, he would have the reach, he would have the power, he would have the technique. Could he get a one-up on Jon Jones? I don't know. But if you take away that chin issue from Alexander Rakic, he can compete with the best of the best. And I think that he would bring a fight to Jon Jones. I'd pick him to win. I know that sounds crazy. I know. But I would pick Alexander Rakic to beat Jon Jones. I'm talking Jon Jones at 205. I'm talking both these guys at 205 in their prime. I would pick Alexander Rakic. I think that specifically for Jon Jones, he would be a difficult matchup. I don't think that Jon Jones would finish him, and I would love to see this fight. I am a fan of watching both of these guys perform, especially Alexander Rakic. I think that he never ended up living up to the potential that he could be, and I think that he would end up actually getting a one-up on Jon Jones, guys. Now, if you want to talk a little bit more about MMA fighters, I did make a video a while ago talking about my favorite fighters of all time. You can check out this video right here, guys. I would love to have you over there. Thank you very, very, very much for watching, everybody. Take care, guys.